July 11th, 2017 regular meeting of the Winchester School Committee. We have, after a call to order and our public comment, we have a number of reports and discussion items, an update on the projected and open enrollment for next year, an update on full-day kindergarten. We're going to talk about district goals and improvement plan, the first discussion. There'll be an update on personnel, an update on the building projects, Winchester High School and McCall Middle School expansion projects, phases 1 and 2, and also an update on the strategic visioning, which didn't make it onto the agenda because it came up after we had already sent it out, but very important thing to do, and Cindy will be able to do that this time.
Do you have copies of that? I put it on the
At the bottom. On the cart?
yeah, on the card.
On the card, okay.
Go ahead. Thanks.
And then, following that, we'll have a few action items, a vote to approve the exchange trip to Spain, a vote to approve the capital projects priority ranking, a vote to approve a gift or accept a gift from the Enka Society. We have some minutes to approve, quick chair report, superintendent report, and our future agenda items that we're looking ahead to are, again, taking up the master plan update, the superintendent's draft goals for next year, and again, strategic visioning. The next meeting date will be July 25th, and then in August we have a workshop meeting. We will have need, following the meeting, of an executive session. First, to consider the purchase, exchange, taking, lease, or value of real property, the Mystic School, and to review minutes, since a discussion in open session may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the school committee. Then to discuss the purposes of discussion of strategy related to individual employment contracts for administrative staff members, since discussion in open session may be detrimental to bargaining, and for purposes of discussion of strategy related to an individual employment contract, the superintendent, since discussion in open session may be detrimental to bargaining. And then we will return to open session only for the purposes of adjournment. So, is there anyone here for public comment? Okay. Then we'll go straight into our first update, which is on the projected enrollment and on open enrollment.
Thank you.
Okay.
In your packet, you have a summary of our projected 2017-18 enrollment. Actually, this is actual registered students and does not include known students who we haven't completed the registration process for. Just wanted to give you a quick update so that you could see what the numbers look like. For example, if somebody came within the last couple of weeks, they wouldn't have been reflected in the computer yet because they hadn't completed the full registration process. So I would expect to have more students enrolled during the summer, particularly at the kindergarten and first grade level, perhaps 20 to 30 more, but right now we have close to 300 kindergartners registered. And fairly balanced numbers, as you can see, across the district, except for Lynch, where we have 92 students registered. And so we are adding a 5th section of kindergarten at Lynch to accommodate that, so the average class sizes will be fairly consistent across the district with room for additional enrollments should they happen. You can see that right now we have 475 students registered at Lynch. That does not include the preschool, that is K to 5. So that's our largest school. Ambrose and VO are fairly similar in size. It's slightly over 4. I'd expect they'd probably top out around 420. Morocco is typically a school that gets a lot of influx in the summer, so they should top 400 or be in that range. And Lincoln should stay right around slightly under 400. So I'm pleased to see that, with the exception of Lynch, that our elementary schools are fairly well balanced. And one thing that we had hoped to do is to look at, through open enrollment, increasing the number of students at Ambrose. You can see Ambrose has the smallest kindergarten and has a proportionately smaller number of second grade students, given that they have 4 sections. So we did have open seats that we added, and open enrollment is closed. We now have 7 students who will be accepted to go to Ambrose kindergarten and second grade. Everyone who is asked will be accommodated. And those students come from mainly from VO and Lynch. And so not a big transfer from Lynch students, but because there were kindergarten and second grade openings, a number of them are sibling pairs who have a kindergartner going in and a second grader at the same time. And so I think some of them are folks who live right on the edge of the district, and it's just as convenient to go to Ambrose. And so they will take advantage of that. The other thing that I just want to make sure everyone is aware of is that because of the unanticipated additional classroom section at Lynch, we needed at least one more classroom. So we looked at all available options, including perhaps moving a specialized program to a different school. You all are aware that we have some open classrooms at VO that were constructed in the fall as a result of some space that was created by the building project. So in the end, when we weighed all the factors, we decided to move 2 of the preschool classrooms, district preschool classrooms, to 2 vacant classrooms at Vincent Owen School, which leaves us with only 1 vacant classroom now at Vincent Owen. It's used as a maker space right now. And it actually is a good facility for the preschool because one of the rooms they're both configured for early childhood. One of them has a bathroom in the classroom. There'll be the 2 end classrooms at that hallway with a door straight out to the kindergarten play area where the preschoolers are appropriately serviced. And we have some pretty firm plans in place to ensure that the program at VO will be very similar to the program at Lynch, with the same specials and a similar separate pickup drop-off area in the rear and a covered area next to the playground. So Principal Grant Smith is working closely with Sarah Casey, who's the preschool director, to ensure that is a smooth move. There'll be some limited additional cost for some furniture that we need to purchase that's specialized, like changing table and so forth for the younger kids. But there is a sensory room already at VO, so those students with special needs will be served well. And I think it's the best plan. It opens up 1 additional classroom at Lynch that can be used for likely expansion next year if we need to go to 5 first grades and so forth, is why you're adding additional classes. So that gives us a 1-year reprieve if we only have to add 1 room at Lynch. So I just wanted to see if anyone had any questions or comments on that. I want to commend everybody involved, John Dupuy, Grant Smith, Sarah Casey, for working to move a 3-year-old classroom and a 4-5 classroom to VO for the fall. It's mainly non-Lynch students. And so those families, some of them are VO families. So I think they'll be well served. But I want to give you a chance to comment if you have any questions.
So I just have a minor one. So the reason why we have to buy furniture, so when we talk about moving a classroom from one school to the other, it's because those classrooms are shared, right? We have morning, afternoon, multi-day. So if you're going to move it out of a building, you got to buy some furniture, right?
Right. They share changing tables.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
Some of the furniture is shared. Some of the toys are shared. So we'll try to be as frugal as possible, but we want the Lynch site and the VO site to be similar in equipment and so forth. Okay, so there's the update on enrollment. I will continue to keep you updated as we get new students enrolling on the numbers. But there are no sort of hot spots that we're really worried about right now.
And Judy, the enrollment process or the registration process involves going straight to here at Parkhurst to the central office, not to the schools. Is that
Yes.
correct?
So Cindy Gallagher is our new registrar. She formerly worked at the high school in a similar capacity, but just for high school. So now families can come here and register all their children in the initial registration. They'll be provided with services for assessment for second language needs and given information about transportation and food service while they're here, including availability of free or reduced price lunch, special education, testing information, all in sort of one place. And then there'll be a follow-up part of the registration at the individual schools for school-specific schedules and so forth. Okay. But we hope everyone will be patient as we sort of implement this new registration process that will ensure that families are well served and welcomed into the district.
Okay. Great. So if no one has any more questions on that.
Just
Next.
one,
Oh.
one just related to the open enrollment piece is, I think you had said you had some initial maybe recommendations around open enrollment. We were going to kind of see how it goes, and based on what you've seen, do you have any inclination to open up other spaces somewhere else, or just sort of sit with what we have and see if any other interest trickles in?
That's a great question. I think I'd like to look at the enrollment on July 25th and see if there are any spots where we are really underserved in terms of the number of students. The problem is just shifting them from, because you can't know what school students will come from.
Right.
You don't always get the desired result, because then you end up
Right.
making classes that are too small somewhere else. So,
Okay.
but it might be worth a look. So let's take a look.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. So next we have an update on full-day kindergarten.
I just wanted to let you know how things were going with full-day kindergarten and make sure that everyone understood the process that's been used. So we currently have close to 300 registered full-day, tuition-free, all-day kindergarten students. So I have still yet to have a single query or question about anything other than full-day. No half-day parents have approached me with any concerns. We do expect to have another 20 to 30, given some of the calls that have been coming in and typical patterns before school begins. Initial kindergarten screening has been completed, and teachers and teaching assistants have been hired. For the most part, I think we have one kindergarten teacher just finished being hired at VO. And each elementary school has 3 full-day kindergarten classrooms, except for Lynch, which has 5. And the additional section of Lynch required moving the pre-K classroom, as I talked about. Jen, Ellen, and Emma had queried the kindergarten teachers to see if they wanted to meet this summer in terms of any curriculum modifications that needed to be made to transition to a full-day program. And Jen, is there anything that's planned for them
Yeah,
specifically?
we're going to work on some stuff in the fall. The biggest thing was to do some stuff with TAs. So actually, I already met with Lori Kirby, and then the elementary principals gave us some feedback on some things, and we're going to work with a couple of teachers to make sure to have the support for the TAs. That was their biggest request.
Okay. So any questions about full-day K? It's been incredibly smooth. As usual, the 5 principals have done an outstanding job.
Out of curiosity, what hours are the teaching assistants going to be working? Do we know that? Is it going to be consistent school to school?
That's a good question. They're all working the same number of hours, but I don't have their individual schedules, so I'll find that out and let you know.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Okay, so district goals and improvement plan. So taking the look at this, the first look at this.
So you might remember that the process for developing the district goals is a kind of a circular one. The school improvement plans that were presented by the principals at the last meeting included some continuation goals and some new goals and action steps. And so what I tried to do in drafting this initial district goals for 17-18 was to look at last year's district improvement plan, review the school improvement plans that were presented by principals, and then keep in mind the strategic visioning feedback that's been led by Cindy Boney. And so I drafted something. I'm not, there's nothing on here that's sacred, but it is just an attempt to get something down on paper so we can start some preliminary discussion. I'm hopeful that we'll continue that discussion at the next meeting, and then finalize the district goals when we meet with the leadership team for our dinner.
Okay.
And then the district goals can be used by teachers and other staff members who are evaluated as part of their connection to their either student learning goal or their professional practice goal. And so thought I'd put something on paper and see how you responded. What did I forget? I guess the key question is, what looks right on? What for sure do we want to keep? What is something that can fall by the wayside that we're going to do but is less important? What are we forgetting and should be added? And then I'll come back with another draft and send it out to the leadership team for feedback. I think it's also important to send it to the teachers and support staff members in the fall, get their feedback before you do the final.
Okay.
So do you want me to just summarize them? Sure. Okay. So the first goal I would suggest falls under the curriculum instruction and assessment category, and really revolves around meeting the needs of individual learners, personalizing learning as much as possible. by providing appropriate training and looking at our practices and our structures. So the 6 items that fall under this category are taken from discussions that we've had this year. None of them should be a surprise. The first is increasing the use of flexible grouping practices, and even at the middle school, where we have a pretty traditional achievement-based grouping model. In the future, I think the trend for most middle schools is to move away from that into more flexible grouping by team. So, but at the elementary level, this particularly applies to the elementary level, looking at flexible grouping for kids who might want to accelerate in mathematics or a certain subject or need additional support based on a pre-assessment. Groups are flexible and change over time, so students aren't sort of wired in to always be in a certain group. So that's something we'd like to investigate and increase. The second, and then why don't I just go through these 6 and then you can give me feedback. Okay. The second is to look at some alternative structures that would support student learning that I think are good practice in some other districts that we've had at one time that I'd like to investigate again, including multi-age, multi-grade, and looping classroom structures for 18-19. It seems to fit in well with the need to personalize the learning environment to meet the students' needs. The third item in this goal would be looking at natural next steps to improve co-teaching. It's just a natural evolution as we evolve and get more skilled and look at what the students and teachers are giving us for feedback.
Is that in PD, you think? Well, how would that take form?
So some of it, a lot of it's professional development, and this is about personalizing instruction, but it also could be about which courses get more co-teaching support, which have we over-supported, how do we ensure that we get feedback on co-teaching so that it's effective, and then change the structure or the supports for those teachers who are co-teaching. So there are some areas in co-teaching where we're expanding for the first time like foreign language, world language. And so naturally we want to be sure that, because there's always concern about special education teachers going into classrooms where they may not have as much content expertise as the primary teacher, that if they're co-teaching, how does that work and how do we support that? Jen, I don't know if there's anything else that, since you've been the spearheading the co-teaching effort, particularly on the PD side.
Like we're adding this summer more professional development that's more like advanced for people who've been doing it for a year or two now, having more advanced sessions for them on the PD. We're having more advanced PD for the evaluators that evaluate people who are co-teaching to provide support to them. So I think those are the things we'll just kind of continue to do, is figure out what do we need next and tweak that, as well as where do we expand and where do we focus our efforts in teaching.
Thank you.
We've been talking about homework and beginning to talk about some grading practices, particularly the use of mid-years and finals, and the June Academy or the other options, so that would fall under that. The bring your own device effort and expansion of technology as a tool for teaching and learning, continuing to support that. And finally, and this is a really exciting one, and it's connected a bit to the MCIEA work that we're doing on performance-based assessment. I started to meet with the world language teachers on the curriculum review, and one of the things that the director, Anna Taroni, said was that she'd like to expand the department. When we were talking about strengths and challenges, she'd like to expand the world language teachers' use of performance-based assessments, which I thought, wow, we're doing that and have teachers learning about that. And Jen had been working with Lori Kirby to do some more in-district training on performance-based assessments, and there seems to be some interest. I don't know, what grade levels and content areas are people coming from who are interested in this?
So we're going to try to focus it with the curriculum as we're doing the curriculum work. So it'll be the world language, it'll be ELA, primarily, pre-K to 9 for now, science, K to 12, and the wellness committee, K to 12.
So any other questions about meeting the needs of individual learners? Anything we've forgotten?
So the co-teaching piece, some of this is, have we looped back around in terms of changes we made from the contract and whether or not that's sort of hit the mark in terms of what we were hoping it would do?
So the two big, I think, contractual changes that we did was that there's an official committee now
Yep.
that we do with it. So that's been very helpful, and we've picked some major pieces we want to focus on, as well as kind of creating some point people at each building for it. So that's been helpful. And then the other contractual change was the idea that we are not contractually obligated to evenly spread the students out, that we can cluster them and services can follow the students. And so far we haven't really seen much of that because we still have more people volunteering to co-teach than we have co-teaching spots. So I think we would really only see that come into play if we had to ask somebody to co-teach who didn't want to.
Yeah, but in terms of them having planning time, and it sounds like having a group that's looking at it, that becomes a change in process, which is as important as the product,
Yeah.
right?
So one thing that we, under this goal, we're talking about both training and also reviewing, revising practices and structures. So I'm hopeful that when we revise schedules for 18-19, we'll try to find additional teacher collaboration time, because the co-teachers now have to get paid extra to work outside the school day to do some co-planning. To some extent, that's fairly limited though, right, Jen?
Do they all do that, or just some of them who don't have the common planning time with their partner?
No, they all have common planning time in their day. But then they also have additional, through grants, we're able to fund, like we give them planning time before the school year starts, and then each quarter we give them additional planning time outside of the school day.
So, which other teachers don't get? Only co-teachers get that, right? Paid extra time?
Well, people get paid for lots of extra different projects to do around PD, but they get specifically to plan together.
So I think that's been a major support for this. So I would love to see more built into the regular schedule, common planning time for all teachers, but particularly for co-teachers. So maybe that's a structural thing we can look at for the budget for 18-19. All right, shall I move on to number 2?
It's fine by me, yep.
Okay, so number 2 is the curriculum renewal that we've been doing. So Jen's got her hands full, and I know many school committee members are getting involved in ELA and literacy, health, wellness guidance, science and technology, which was an extra that we had not planned on, but because they finally approved the standards, the new science standards, we've embarked on that. We've had a proposal from the math department to move to an integrated math program, and so we really need this fall to plan for that, because if we're going to purchase materials or software to support that program, it needs to be in next year's budget for 18-19. And I've just started to launch the world language effort with representatives from Italian, Latin, French, and Spanish, both middle and high school teachers. And so that's a little bit of an abbreviated effort, but we have a couple of goals that we want to get feedback on. First, looking at moving language to start in 6th grade, and looking at adding a non-Western language starting in middle school. There still is some discussion about what happens with Latin. Does that just stay a high school program? I think the Latin teachers obviously would like to see it move to the middle school, but we're trying to see what our main focus should be. Should it be a spoken language, a modern language for students' primary language? If we introduce in 6th grade, is it every day as a core course? Is it, how do students choose? Those sorts of questions. How can we increase proficiency? And I was really excited to see that a lot of the world language teachers are very interested in a proficiency-based model of grouping students, sort of novice, intermediate, advanced, as opposed to a typical Spanish 1, Spanish 2, Spanish 3, Spanish 4 that's sort of prescribed and doesn't change to meet the needs of the students. And we also discussed, and this is another innovation that school committee members and community would have to weigh in on, should we try for an immersion classroom somewhere in the district, one or more, where students start in a dual language program in kindergarten? And are we prepared to take that on, and is it advisable? So they had a lot of good ideas, and so we'll do all of this as part of the self-study for world language.
So you can tell from my expression I'm trying to say something,
Yeah.
if I may, Susan.
Happy.
Yep, go ahead.
So if we were to pursue the immersion concept, I would like us to look at effectiveness of those programs as a function of the age of the kids, because research suggests strongly that that's more effective when they start at a younger and younger age. So I think about, I mean, I'm very interested in immersion, but I might be more interested in it at the kindergarten level versus, 6th grade. Not that you said it was 6th grade.
Yeah, I think the understanding would be starting in kindergarten.
In kindergarten, okay. As well as some understanding about what immersion actually means, right? Because in some districts, that means, like, if it's English and French, then it means when you're talking about math, you're doing it in French.
At least some of the time.
At least some of the time, yeah.
So I actually tweeted an article today from the New York Times about biliteracy, which was kind of a bilingualism, which is an interesting concept. And if we talk more in detail about this, we'd have to talk about where would it be and what language and making sure we had qualified teachers. There are some disadvantages academically. Students who are trying to learn to speak 2 languages sometimes don't make quick academic progress as their peers because they're trying to think in 2 languages. They catch up eventually, but it is a little bit of a lag there, and so there are a lot of advantages and disadvantages to every program, but we can talk about it. It's kind of exciting. So we do not currently have a school committee member representative on that group. We've just had one organizational meeting, and I know several of you are already there are not enough of you to go around. So if anyone is interested in sitting in on some of those meetings or helping out, we welcome a school committee member. If it's an area of passion for you, just let me know, and I'll let you know when the next meeting is, which is in August. So, third, strategic visioning, and Cindy will talk more about this. I think that this is an overarching goal that cuts across all of the other goals, but really looking at ensuring that our programs, practices, and resources are aligned with what our community says are our values and our vision for the district. We have begun to engage in the planning process. We have not done the plan. We have just started to narrow our focus into what the vision is, but really the action steps mean fostering learning environments that recognize, encourage, and value students' diverse interests, talents, skills, and enable all students to excel and achieve their potential. And so this is a very broad goal, and the action steps will naturally come out of the next steps on the strategic visioning process.
Do you see yourself or the district doing, or the leadership team doing a formal strategic planning process
I think
as sort of a next step?
I think that that is the natural next step. Even if it's not a traditional strategic plan, I think that there needs to be something that comes from establishing the vision and the benchmarks against which we can check decisions. And so a statement of what we believe, a statement of what we're going to hold each other accountable for in terms of our mission, and then some action steps that follow from that, I think would be a good idea. But
I'm just wondering if this is beyond strategic visioning, which will presumably be
strategic
over
planning
in the fall, so until July 1st of 2018, it would be strategic planning. It's
right.
sort of,
then it morphs into strategic
how do we live
planning.
it?
Yeah. The 5th goal I have is supporting program improvement in some educational innovation areas. So I've talked about world language, innovative school schedules. We've been involved in that at the school level. You haven't seen any of the presentations yet. We're going to finalize that in the fall, bring it to you for your feedback. This is for 18-19. And then school start time review, which in light of everything else going on in the district, we've had conversations about, but we got to put it in hyperdrive starting in the fall if we're going to implement it for 18-19. Are there any other innovations that fall under this category that I've forgotten to note?
Is the school schedules just at the high school, or is that?
Pre-K to 12.
Pre-K to 12, okay.
Yeah.
And that means within a school day.
That means within a school day, and you might remember that in 18-19, that's our third year of our contract, we have extended the school day possibly through the contract negotiations, so that's another little piece of it.
So I don't know where this fits in here, but it feels as though we're about to, I can't believe I'm saying, that we're about to see a big increase in enrollment, specifically at the high school. And, you know, I feel like we've heard from the principal that there's some concerns about staffing, you know, us being able to ramp up the staffing as quickly as we need. And I was looking at, number one, around sort of alternative structures, and obviously we already do multi-age up there, but I wonder if we need to look at some creative thinking, and maybe it has to do with scheduling. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but, you know, things even as weird as looping, you know, where you might have the same teachers with the same students moving through 2 years as a way that we can embrace increasing, if we have to, class size, and still have as much impact. I think co-teaching has been one approach, but I wonder if this year we really need to think about how we spend time with students and if there's some innovative ways that we can.
Let me see if I can incorporate that somehow.
So could that not be picked up in A, or you're thinking about something different in addition to F, Cindy?
Number one,
Yeah.
I actually was looking at B.
Oh, I thought you said number one.
1B.
Number 1B.
1B, oh, okay.
I mean, we're at 5, so it sort of has to do with schedules.
Right.
And it, but do you understand?
No, I know.
What
I
I'm
think it's,
saying is,
I think encouraging things like dual enrollment and internships could bring more space in the school for other students to take regular classes. As I said, I think when we talked about the next 10 years in terms of how much classroom space we need at the high school, I see us as being much more flexible about how we define what a high school experience is in the next 10 years. That I'm hopeful that we can have more blended learning, some more online options, some more experiential learning where kids are going off and doing something for some part of the year and not sitting in a traditional class after class after class. Because that's not the experience they'll ever have again. They won't have it in college. They'll go to classes, but they'll be a couple times a week. Some of them are long, so, you know. And I think that our students are mature and capable enough to be given more choice and voice in how they want to learn. And so I'm hopeful that we can also extend the school day and use the building later in the day for some classes, as we have started to do. We ran into some contractual issues when we were negotiating the last contract, but I think that we could get more flexibility so that students could not all be going to class all at the same time, lockstep. And so that would be my goal. I'm hoping that the innovative school schedule piece will allow for some more flexibility, but I think it's going to take some work to land in a place where our high school is more responsive and individualized and less sort of college prep, everybody goes to the same path. And if you haven't done exactly the same thing in the same order. There was another article I tweeted today about schools that are looking at eliminating grading, and it's a lot of the the independent schools that are very high performing. They're looking at a proficiency-based model, and the way our high school is organized in our program of studies does not lend itself to necessarily letting students accelerate to proficiency or take more time to get to proficiency. I think there's been some good research that says just because you're 6 years old doesn't mean you're ready to go to first grade, or that our age-based grouping practices are convenient for adults but maybe not always best for kids, which is why this whole multi-age, multi-grade, looping, innovative structures, making the best use of our facility, and how many colleges are within 20 minutes of where we are, where we could send kids off to do great things and amazing businesses. It's going to take a lot of work and organization, and I think some open-mindedness on everybody's part. But I hope that our students will be more engaged and happier, and if we want to look at our social-emotional goal, gain more confidence, be given more opportunity to develop the major trait which we all want, which is kindness. And so if we define those things as part of our strategic vision, we've got to look at how does our schedule and our current program offerings align with what we want students to be like. And I think that all of us would say, despite our best efforts, there's a little bit of a disconnect. So Cindy, let me think about the high school enrollment piece and see if we can get more specific in the goals about that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we can even see if there's some other districts that have done some creative work around it. if they've had a big boom or something.
Yeah, and I think we can look at some of the private schools and see what they're doing about, innovative structures and programs.
Thank you.
Sure. Anything else I've forgotten? The last one, obviously, small, puny, not much work. Implement the building project.
Any-
And normally that's not a goal because it's something that we know we're going to do. We've got a high school project and it's the last year. But I would have to say, looking at the updated master plan and then putting that into place so that we have rooms and facilities that match what teachers and students need and have sufficient space is going to be a huge challenge and will require an incredible level of partnership and advocacy with the town and the townspeople. And so number 6 will take a lot of all of our time.
Absolutely.
And will require an immense effort.
Yeah.
Yeah, my only question is, I'm torn. I love how detailed this is and how well thought out about how the many different areas there are, but it also scares me how much there is on this page and a quarter or whatever it is. That there's just a lot to do in 1 year.
So we had deliberately tried to pull back on the number of
Right.
goals that we were going. It doesn't mean all of these things aren't going to get done or we're not going to work on them. But the ones we're going to focus most of our resources and energy on, if we wanted to pare that back, 6 is probably too many. But what comes off?
Well, can we talk about 2 for a minute? Am I reading too much between the lines here? Does 2 mean curriculum review? And that all of these would happen? Because I thought a year ago, although we would love for that to be the case, it seems like a year ago we talked about biting off 1 or 2 at a time just to make it manageable, especially so Jen doesn't jump off a bridge, right? So, maybe you could talk about what curriculum renewal means, because I would think a part of that would be a curriculum review, which is itself a big task, and there's 5 things here.
So Jen, you want to talk about that one? Because this really falls under your...
So, thank you, Chris, for how many things can we do? I think it turns out, I feel like we'll really actually in the next year be, I probably have all of them involved, even though that wasn't originally our intention.
Yeah.
Just because, we want to follow when people are interested and excited about things. So, we've already got the 4 going now, and then math. Math wants to get going on it, so really when we look at it, we'll probably have everything in the pot within the next year, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because, like, as we're talking about performance-based things, it's nice when everybody's hearing about some of the same things and working on it rather than in stages,
Right.
that kind of rolling out. So we've tried to make connections between things so people don't feel like there's all these disjointed initiatives. So there's the MCIEA work, but now we're trying to dovetail that naturally with the curriculum work or other pieces so that we're trying to pull them together. So, I think it'll be manageable.
I changed the term from review to renewal because I didn't want it to feel like we just looked at it once and then it's done. And then you don't have to think about it's always an ongoing process to look at your curriculum instruction and assessment in a content area. But this curriculum renewal really brings together teachers across all grade levels who teach similar content and ensures that we sort of have articulation across from K to 12 and that we're really purposeful about looking at resources and professional development and really focusing in on the needs of ELA or wellness in a way that's sort of structured and purposeful. And then with world languages, we have some specific things we want to accomplish, especially around 6th grade, especially around a non-Western language. But we need to ensure that our teaching practices are having the desired result. And I was really pleasantly surprised and gratified to hear the language teachers talking about going for more training on a proficiency-based model and reorganizing the structure of world language. And so sometimes things come out that you don't expect in a curriculum renewal review. So we know we're doing this anyway. We could take this off and it could be part of the background. I think we're holding ourselves accountable for getting these things done, and so some of them...
I think it ties back into the first one anyway.
It does.
all of them.
I mean, I think something like this belongs here. I was just reacting to the fact that there's 5
so
of them.
many, yeah.
And what I thought we talked about a year ago. I mean, if you feel like you have the bandwidth for it, you do. I sort of agree with Susan.
Social studies.
It's a lot of work.
Social studies
Feels
is,
left out.
Yeah, well, and I was going to ask about STEM as well.
Well-
So we've added a new STEM coordinator, and how does that fit into all?
So interesting. I was
Yes.
just about to say a thank you and a plug for not only the STEM coordinator, but the stipends that we added at the elementary level with the grade level and the STEM point people. Like already, I mean, first of all, officially, these people just really started July 1st, and already you can see the efforts. The new STEM coordinator, Catherine, was in meeting with a whole bunch of groups before July 1st even started, and she's already up and running, and we had a science thing yesterday. She's following up on a bunch of pieces with that and pulling in the STEM point people to be part of that. So I think those extra layers of curriculum focus and support allows us to take on more, increases our bandwidth, shall we say.
Good point.
In a nice way, and we see that too because we have ELA and we have, you know, even though these pieces are just elementary pieces, we have, you know, like Katie Malone in the literacy piece, and so that's been really helpful. And we have kind of a shift, and we're trying to shift a little bit what have maybe been more management kind of duties that some of the curriculum coordinators at like the middle school level have had, and shifting those into instructional leadership roles and taking on some of those pieces. So we see a different level of teacher leadership coming up from those pieces, which is super effective.
and Carolyn can help with the wellness.
Yeah, and
So that-
she's working, like tomorrow, they're working with the ruler and moving that with people going to the middle school level. So it's allowed us to do more with these new positions and to increase the stuff and to just capitalize on when teachers are interested and already wanting to move with something. We're not the ones holding them up now, so it's been great. Yes.
So, there's a lot, I agree with that comment there, and my sort of concern about the number of things and the sort of aspirational portion of a lot of these things is, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, this is more like a list of ideas. The plan would be critical to make this happen, so that will have to come about.
Right.
And then one thing I didn't hear you say is, don't we have this NEASC audit of the high school? That may have itself some ideas, so that certainly won't be next year. It certainly should be in our goals to implement those things, make it have it in. But as I look at this, there's gonna be these ideas kind of descending down on the population. And then there's gonna be the need for funding of those things if they turn into something concrete. And then what you should expect and anticipate in the plan should try to address is the concerns that will bubble up from all that change. So I heard professional development, but I think there needs to be a component about changing culture. You're really gonna ask a lot from many people, and there will be, I mean, just for example, how would you manage the changes that some of these things would sort of discuss and then ultimately try to sort of pilot, when in fact they might actually conflict with a graduation requirement, courses that need to be taken? Or how would you sort of manage the fact that there's no teacher for the courses there, and then the teachers that want to keep the courses that they have are going to be in conflict with each other about who's going to get the time and space? So that plan part of it is probably going to be the biggest challenge to make this happen, and certainly in 1 year, that would be really huge.
So that, I think you raise a really good point. I think that if we adopt some of these as goals, some of them are multi-year goals, and we have a little bit of an end goal in mind, and that is we have an opportunity in 18-19 with slightly longer school days and looking at school schedules to implement some pretty constructive change and innovation. And I think if someone went to our high school or even our middle school and looked at our schedule, it would look very much like the one I had when I was in high school, and that was, many decades ago. And so, while we're certainly doing a lot of innovative things in all of our schools, I think a lot of things about schools change very, very slowly. And so we're trying to balance keeping high achievement, keeping great school cultures, but making the change that we know the social, emotional feedback that we're getting from our students tells us that we need to make. And one of the things that Cindy has done, and she's going to talk about it in a few minutes, is when she met with groups of students to get feedback from the high school, it was very insightful. They were very clear about what they needed, And I think it's time we really listened to them and tried to do some of the things that they're asking and telling us that they need. So I agree with you. This isn't a plan. This is sort of broad categories. And then next steps would be writing an action plan over, I think for some of these, a 2-year plan or a 3-year plan to get some of it done.
Just a final thought. I agree with that, and I'm not in any way opposed to any of these ideas, but what I might be suggesting is that one of the sort of plan or goals should include how to sort of effectively manage change. And that could be building-based thing, or it could be across an entire unit.
It's true. And I think Jen was right when she said, if we not only listen to the students, but we listen to teachers, there are teachers who are asking us to investigate some of these things as well. And so ensuring that it's not a top-down effort and that it's something like the elementary homework initiative that sort of bubbled up from the teachers after feedback from parents and students, that'll be an important part of it. I think that's a critical piece. If you're going to improve, you know, as someone told me once, leadership is, it's great to be a leader, but you gotta, if you turn around, there's no one behind you, you're not a leader, you're just out there by yourself. And so our leadership team knows that, and I think we're really blessed to have some very skilled members of that team. But we will make some mistakes, and we will have some false starts, and we will try some things that won't work, and that's part of growing. So as long as we are all aware of that.
I think too that much like technology is no longer a standalone goal, and I don't really see social emotional in here as a standalone goal anymore. We're beginning to embed this stuff once we truly have all bought into it. But I agree with you. You have to articulate it first and recognize it, validate that it's an issue before you can just automatically embed it into any change.
Success, good.
Yeah.
So one goal that's not on here that I just wanted your feedback on quickly is something that I've been struggling around. Our increasingly diverse district in terms of our student population and how we can best adapt to prepare students for the world that's broader than Winchester, and what we need to do beyond teaching teachers about social justice issues and how to incorporate that into their classroom, or about recruitment and retention of more diverse teaching and support staff. I think that it's time for us to do some more, to take some bolder steps in that direction, but I'm not quite sure where to go with that, because that's not something that's been bubbling up from teachers. It's bubbled up a little bit from a few parents, but
from
more,
parents, yeah.
but a broader need in this community conversation. So that's a hard one, and I didn't really know how to frame that, but if you want to think about that, we could talk about that at our next meeting about.
So that's our homework, to think about that.
What do you think? Do you think it's worth considering? Does it rise to the level of one of our most important goals, or is it a sidebar conversation?
Worth considering, yeah.
I think it's worth considering. You know, there's some very high-achieving private schools that are wrestling with this very same issue, and it's gotten to a point where student bodies are kind of coming forward and saying what's happened here. And I think some administrations aren't quite sure how they missed that. Playing catch up a little bit. I would just add, though, that obviously who we hire is a large function of who applies, and to a large degree, who works here are the people who applied for openings based on some impression that they have of Winchester, and so how we put ourselves out there, what we sort of say we aspire to be with respect to this issue you've raised, I think is central. And you talk about how it can take a while to change a culture. I don't know how you change an identity, right? How do you change an identity of a district in that respect? That would be a pretty big task.
But some of that is kind of a natural evolution or sideways change from social and emotional health. You know, bullying can arise from cultural differences, or, that's, there's an overlap there that I think we could probably think about.
Well, I think I've made it a specific recommendation in all of the administrators' evaluations this year is to increase the opportunities to work with staff members around these issues and encourage participation in the professional development that Jen has arranged for the summer, and then maybe, we'll try to continue it in the fall. But just something that I was wrestling with and didn't really know whether you wanted me to put it in.
Well, maybe part of that is also a larger question of what are our assumptions about our student profiles today, and how do we know what we know about them? You know, and that could be in a whole host of areas, right?
Right.
Okay.
So it's kind of interesting, I was just thinking today about how many members of our leadership team and our wider leadership team come from multicultural families, multiracial families. And that isn't as reflected in the people actually who are sitting in the seats, but our it was reflected in our own families, which is very interesting to me. And increasingly, our student population are students who are not identifying as single race students anymore, but starting to be, in the double digits of students who are identifying from multiple races or cultures, ethnicities coming in to our classrooms. So the world is really changing so quickly. But if we keep teaching in the same way with the same materials, I don't think our kids will be well prepared. So that's just my...
So, Cindy, I don't want to put you on the spot, but it seems like a next logical topic to take up would be visioning. So if you want to go ahead with that, that'd be great.
So,
So we're not done with it.
I'm not quite sure. I'm gonna highlight a couple things, but I'm interested to hear what the school committee wants to hear more about. So as you remember, last December we started off the process. We brought together stakeholders to really serve as outreach specialists within their stakeholder group. So the charge that they were given was really, how do we reach out to your stakeholders or your representative group and engage them and begin to better understand what's going on and where we hope to sort of head. There were 3 guiding principles that directed our work. And I'm literally going to read these because I think it's just easiest to do that. The first was that we hired a consultant who came in and worked with us and helped to frame these. And by having these 3 guiding principles, we were able to all sort of get on the same page. The first one was that our schools are by nature fractal. And so whether it's the fears that sway our behavior, the influence that adults have over their environment and others, or our learning curves, all levels of school participants, whether that's students, teachers, administrators, we all share experiences and go hand in hand as learners, so we rise or fall together. You won't find a school district where the students have rapidly increasing learning speed, but the teachers are staying flat, and you don't see vice versa. Everyone sort of learns together. It's a learning organization or it's not. Secondly, when our schools, classes, and meetings are psychologically safe and support accountability, so it's not an either or, but an and, all can learn best. And this second principle really addresses how schools can prevent both high levels of anxiety and low levels of energy, whether that's through compliance or other pieces. And then finally, really only by engaging each other as lifelong learners, really engaging people, taking risks, and being very deliberate, embracing differences, doubt, and disagreements, can we increase our collective ability to adapt to the rapid pace of change in the world for which we are preparing our students. The idea here is that things change quickly. We need to keep pace. We need to be able to embrace the fact that the human nature can't change as quickly as probably we need to. And so if we are going to grow and if we're going to learn, we are going to have to stumble. We're going to have to take some risks. We're going to have some arguments and some disagreements. We have to get out of the world of just being nice to one another and actually challenge each other and what we know to be true and moving that forward. So once we sort of had all come together on those 3 guiding principles, we started to move out through concentric circles. We started with the school committee and the administration, then we let out to the supervisory, which is all the curriculum instruction supervisors, directors, building leaders. And then we went out and we had a community group. And then we had these, so we had focus groups with each of these groups, asking the same questions. And then we shifted to create online surveys. And we never really got to a point where we were able to figure out how best to engage parents. We were going to do one meeting, and then it just got to be really late in the spring, and we were going to go to different PTOs, but that didn't seem like an impactful way. And then the union was really great at getting the word out to its members, and I went to one meeting of all the building representatives and explained what we were doing, but didn't really get to engage them in a 2-hour conversation. They just didn't have time, frankly. So the shift really began, our thinking began to shift around perhaps those groups, families, staff, and parents or community members. We would maybe go back to in the fall after we had chewed this up, revised it, refined it, and get some more feedback from them with all of the data. So we had about, 500 people or so complete the survey. I went out and I went to about 15 classes. The English department at the high school invited me to come in. I went to about 15 classes, so each of them had about 20, 25 students.
Okay.
And had the exact same sort of mini workshops with them, really insightful stuff. And then we brought all that information back, and the working in the advisory group began to come up with sort of discrete themes that were beginning to emerge. We voted on them, started to prioritize them, started to build language around them, and we have a shared document that we're working on over the summer to really refine that. But clearly, 3 themes evolve from that. The first is that while Winchester is an academically excellent school district, we can also be an exceptional and raise our expectations around social emotional wellness and well-being. Kindness was the most frequently prioritized response when we asked what kind of students, learners and community members we want our students and our teachers to be. And it's funny because kindness is such a simple thing, but to have so many people articulate it as something that was a priority to them, I think was reassuring, but also a little surprising maybe.
So I just want to point out that the surveys were very open-ended, and
Yeah.
so people had to type in the word kindness and prioritize it. They were asked to list in several different groups, and across all groups, that was the most frequent aspiration. Students want to be seen as kind, teachers and parents and others, community members want our students to be kind.
So you're having this moment of thinking, wow, this is actually working. They're actually telling us what they really think, and a lot of people think along the same lines on this point. So that's good. That's good.
Yeah. And I was delighted to hear that people felt like we could do both, that it didn't have to be an either or. I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
The second piece, which I didn't bring up when we were talking about goals and whatnot, because it kind of focuses in on the strategic visioning, is around this concept of respecting the individual and celebrating that there are very diverse pathways of success for our students. That if we truly believe, for all the reasons we do, in the benefits of differentiating instruction, we kind of have to differentiate the program as well. And I think that this theme specifically speaks to this group around our table, because if we're looking at policy is very across the board. It's not differentiated. Is that we may need to look at some of that and bring some of that back, so that we create space for people to define success in the way that works best for them. And when we talk about success, we're not just talking about students. We're not just talking about whether you get into college. This also has to do with staff. How do staff feel that they're most successful? What are the indicators that make them feel productive? How do the administrators feel successful? So we started this by saying, hey, we want to redefine how we define success, or we want to have a conversation about how we define success. And what we realized is that there may be 4,500 different ways that we're going to define success. And there are financial and programmatic and personnel implications of all of that. And then finally, sort of as a catch-all, we knew that high-impact visioning really requires some degree of shift in culture. And, whether it's if we respect everyone, you can't ask everyone to ask for bathroom passes. or whether it's we believe in growth mindsets, then we have to actually give kids an opportunity to explore different growth mindsets. And we have to build it into our assessments and build it into how we look at change and growth and continuous improvement. And if we believe that inspiring independent thinking is important, then we're going to have differences in meetings. We're going to argue a little bit. Our classrooms might get a little louder. So there's this feeling that while we've been very successful doing what we've done, if we really want to embrace some of these differences or these changes, that we're going to need to look at cultural shifts. And that takes time and energy and conversations, and some of those conversations are hard and they can get messy, but we want to move forward with it. Our expectations that over the summer, the leadership team will really be looking at this and refining and revising and building it into district plans and school improvement plans, and it'll really become part of the conversation. And then when we get together end of the summer with them, hopefully it'll come up. And then in the fall, we will bring these, what we're calling beacons, back to the community and say, okay, parents, what do you think? Okay, staff, what do you think? Are we getting it right? Are we missing anything? And frankly, really begin to narrow down what we're talking about. And I don't see us coming up with more than 3 or 4 beacons.
You don't see us what?
Coming up with more than 3 or 4 beacons. This is not going to be a laundry list of things. They're going to be very broad. So, sorry if that was too much. It's hard to
Great work.
get into it without getting into it. Do you guys have any questions? Do you have any?
Students talk a lot about bathroom passes. Just curious, since you brought that up as an example. In the context of kindness, even, perhaps.
You know, as a parent, I've heard some, I've had some conversations with my kids about how different teachers approach the need for students to leave the room to go to the bathroom,
Yep.
and how it makes you feel, or,
Yeah.
you know, something they encountered, certainly in high school, so.
The kids and the teachers,
Yeah.
too. I think there was a general sense that people feel better when they feel like they have some control and they have a voice in what things are. One of the best examples, one of the students was very articulate and said that those classes where they get to choose whether they're going to take it as an honors level or a college prep level after they've started the class. Like, for instance, Judy Hessian does one on Shakespeare and drama, I think. And you sign up for the class and you take the class, and depending on if you think you can handle it, the rigor, and if you're really engaged in the content, you can take it for an honors level credit or you can take it for regular college level credit. And it changes how much homework you have or how much your deliverables might be. And they were saying that's a perfect example of where you say that you don't want us to be stressed out, so give us a choice to figure it out as we go and let us take the risk if we want to, but not feel like we have to. And no one else in that room knows whether or not we're doing it for honors or college prep. So there's no anxiety between our peers. I thought that was a really interesting area, and they focused on it a lot. A lot of kids brought that up, which I thought was really interesting.
That's a really great example, just because however you take it has no impact on the high school schedule whatsoever. You're
Right.
still in the class.
Exactly.
So what difference does it make?
That's a flexible grouping strategy.
Yeah.
Seems
Great.
very sensible.
Thank you, Cindy. This
Yeah.
is terrific.
Yep.
And Cindy,
And
the
thanks
students you
to
talked to were only
Chris.
the high school students, right? You didn't go down to the middle school level or?
So I only talked to the high school students, but a middle school student reached out to one of the planning team members, working team members, and actually asked to have a conversation about some of the issues related to middle school students, and they had an after-school conversation about it, actually. And then that educator went back to the staff and said, I'll be available before school and during lunch so I can debrief you on what I heard from the students. And it was a pretty rich, robust conversation from what I understand, and a lot of students participated. There were about maybe 30 plus students that showed up to it, which is pretty good for 6th, 7th, 8th graders
Yeah,
to
that's
stay
great.
after school and
And did you see common themes in the middle school issues as you did in the high school?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, of course, of course.
Yep. So that makes one other question occur to me. If, someone during the summer suddenly wants to reach out and talk about this, who would they reach out to, or how could they do that? Is that possible?
So, no, that's a great question. So, for all of your reference to on the website for the district is a button. And if you go on there, all this update is there. You can see who was on the planning team. You can see all the themes that are coming up. You can see some of the responses. One of the questions we asked all students was, what would you like other people to know about Winchester students? And there's a list there. It's very interesting. We asked the same question about teachers. What would you like others to know, or staff? What would you like others to know about Winchester staff members? Very interesting information. There's a email address where people can continue to send stuff in. People can continue to send in survey documents, and it'll be noted whether it's a new survey versus one that got incorporated into what we've done so far.
All right.
But a lot of these conversations, I think, are continuous. They're evergreen, and
That's good. Thank you.
yeah. Is there anything you want to add? Chris was
So-
there every step of the way.
So Cindy has definitely pulled the weight here. I will add that every time I sit in a meeting, I'm reminded, and I often raise my hand at the end and say, we really need to get a lot more of the parents and the rest of the community involved with this thing, because whenever you engage in this thing and you participate and you understand it, the change is outside of the kid's life inside the building. It's community, it's funding, it's teachers, it's administration, it's expectations amongst, the way we sort of use success in life. And so once people engage in it, then they are sort of more equipped to sort of, okay, now this involves me changing, so now I'm really engaged. So it's really kind of interesting.
All right, so that brings us to an update on personnel from Judy.
Very briefly. So you know that our Director of Personnel, Sean Walsh, moved to the South Shore, alas, to Randolph, to be closer to home. He has young children. And he will be greatly missed. And so we did a search. We interviewed a number of candidates. Chris Nixon sat on that search committee. And we did not find a good match in the interviewed candidates. Even though we had some highly qualified people, this is a very important position in the district and requires a great skill set, both as in education and also in managing and directing and supporting personnel. So we took a look internally to see whether we had any out-of-the-box candidates. And the first person who came to mind was Lori Kirby. Lori, as you might know, was a longtime teacher in the district with 20 years experience as a teacher, I think 12 years as a principal. And I had been encouraging, as had previous superintendents, Lori to explore central office positions at some point. She's been certified for some time as an assistant superintendent. And so we approached Lori, and she thought about it and took the big leap, I'm pleased to say, and has taken on this new role. She'll have lots of supports from both Sean is doing some transition work with her. There's a job-alike group. We'll send her for some training. There's actually an assistant superintendent's academy that some HR people typically attend. In some other districts, the director of personnel is also an assistant superintendent. And so Lori has already started, which left us with a vacancy at Morocco School. I always like to engage the wider community, teachers and parents, in a search for a principal. It's such a personal choice, and you really want people to be invested. So, but because this opening came up rather quickly, I also looked internally for an interim principal, and was pleased to be able to speak with Leslie West, who's been a long time assistant principal, highly respected and valued assistant principal at McCall Middle School. She's also done some work in elementary schools in the past, and has a strong and diverse background. And so she is a lifelong Winchester resident and went to the schools, and in fact was a student in Lori Kirby's elementary classroom at one point, which tells you how young some of our administrators are. And she has accepted the interim principal position at Morocco School, and we couldn't be happier to have her do that, which leaves us with now a vacancy at McCall, and we're still looking at our options for filling that as an interim assistant principal. So I am always very pleased when you can promote from within. It speaks to the strength of the team and the preparation of the team, and particularly with Lori Kirby, who could easily have left us and gone to another district to be a director of curriculum or an assistant superintendent. To have her here as part of the central office team is just a joy. So I just wanted to make sure you all had a chance to ask any questions that you had about that. It did all come about fairly quickly once we realized that the pool from which we had to select just wasn't fitting our needs for the director of personnel position.
Anybody have anything to ask?
I would just add, I think I also share your enthusiasm for Lori, willing to do it, but I actually think it'll be a great fit for her. So of all of us at the table, I've seen her in action at Morocco for many years, and I think this could actually be a fantastic strong suit for her. And I don't know, Judy, in other districts, how much experience HR directors have in school buildings and in classrooms, but I think it's a real asset. I mean, certainly Sean had a passion for the educational experience, but to have someone like Lori in this role, in an HR position, engaging with teachers, is just incredibly helpful. I think it's a fantastic fit.
Good. I mean, a lot of the
agree.
people we interviewed didn't come from the educational pathway. They came through the business office pathway, and we're more geared towards sort of payroll and, family medical leaves and sort of the logistics of managing personnel. And I echo what you see as a strength. A big part of this is supporting evaluation, supervision, coaching, and she's done that very successfully for many years, and she knows what it's like to be a teacher. And when teachers are having issues, she will be empathetic, but she'll balance accountability with safety in a way. I think that will be great. Jen, I don't know if there's anything that you want to add to this about how, you've only worked with Lori for a week now as central
We've
office
had lots
person.
of things actually percolate this week, and Lori's done amazing, as we knew would be a good fit for her in this personality piece, so.
Yeah.
And great.
So Judy, you mentioned a STEM coordinator. That's someone who was here it's not a new person. It's a
So Jen can speak,
new role.
Jen managed that hire, so.
So Catherine Dwyer was a 5th grade teacher at Ambrose for many years, and so we interviewed several people from inside the district and several people from outside the district. She was an outstanding candidate, and she's already off and running with it. So the role's new, but she's not new.
Got it.
So I will tell you a very quick Catherine story. So I didn't know Catherine very well, except having been in her classroom a few times. So was it Friday this happened?
Friday afternoon. Yes.
Late Friday afternoon, Catherine and I and one other person were the last ones here. Jen was coming back. She was off to do something and was coming back. And so I was sitting in my office, and I heard a strange noise. And I looked up, and standing next to my door was the biggest woodchuck I have ever seen in my life. It was the size
It
of
was
a small
joke
pony.
when I got the text.
So I
Was your door
I
open?
thought she was
No.
joking when she sent the text.
Your
so
outside door wasn't open. This
no,
was
my
in the
outside door was
hallway.
not open. So he had made his way inside the inside door, and he was standing in the middle of my office, and he looked at me, and I said, "Hello." And then I get up from my desk to go open the door and let him out because a woodchuck. And I said,
in the building?
He's not on your calendar. You
building?
can't possibly meet with him.
He was in my office.
You have to let him out.
Outside here,
He lives
he's always
outside.
in the yard out
He lives
front.
outside.
It's adorable. Yeah.
So, but he's very
he thought he'd
large,
move in. Yeah,
very
he's
very
coming
large,
in. Yeah.
Well
So-
nourished, yes.
and well nourished. And so, so then he scooted out the door. So I ran after him, and I could not find him anywhere. And I went to find Catherine Dwyer. Said, "Don't be alarmed. There's a large woodchuck loose."
Like, I'm a science person.
And she says, "I'm the
fine."
science person." And she and I looked in every room and every closet up and down this building, and we could not find the woodchuck. I knew Jen was coming back to work Friday night because, of course, who else would be working Friday night? So I texted her and said, "Don't be alarmed. I think he's a vegetarian, but
A piece of wood.
he's locked in the
He's a
he's locked in the building."
vegetarian.
Yeah, exactly.
Catherine did not, shirk her responsibilities. She and I valiantly tried to find the woodchuck. The moral of the story is you keep looking. He was actually trapped yesterday in the building and sent on his way, and he's out there frisking in the field and being
He is. He's
his
back
little
in the
woodchuck's
field,
up.
and he's right. I said, Pete, we have located the woodchuck. So now we need some assistance getting him out to his home.
The animal
Do
control
not
officer
hurt
came.
the woodchuck. He says, why don't you play him some soft music and give him a snack? Great idea.
So the woodchuck was safely dispatched outside the building. But I'm telling that
Their
story.
newest yoga instructor at the high
Exactly.
school.
I'm just wondering what this is
Scream
going
and
to
run
look like.
away.
in
She
the
didn't
beginning
scream
minutes
and
of
run
this
away.
meeting.
She was a problem solver.
I thought you were gonna say this used to be Sean's job.
Sean used to take care of the mice, so we do still have that opening if anyone wants it.
Right. So anyway, it speaks well to her.
Yes. All right.
She's a real team player.
Great.
It's not thrown by critters.
Hope you enjoyed that story.
That's a good story. Building projects.
Do you want me to just do the high school piece and then you
Go
can
to
do
high
the
school.
McCall piece? So I put in your booklet, this is the EFPBC gets this kind of report, and I think I actually forward these to you pretty regularly from Consigli. And what you can see is that a lot of the classrooms in the A and B buildings have classroom furniture, the floors are done, the ceilings are done, the rooms are ready. There is some great learning space. There are some great learning spaces that have been completed, and we're anxious to move in. The modulars are leaving us much more quickly than we had anticipated, and the site work then can be done to plant the trees and do the plantings and pave where the parking lot needs to be paved. And so we fully expect to be ready to open the doors in September, and so I think we're in very good shape. The project budget is probably tighter at the end than the building committee would like to see in terms of lots of leeway to do extra things, but I'm pretty confident we're going to be okay. And we will have great new technology, great new learning spaces, and a high school that will be very up to date and safe and clean and ready to go. So I'm really pleased with the work that's been done on this 3-year project.
Can I add a couple communications plugs since we
Please
have a
do.
reporter in the audience here?
He's listening.
He's listening. So September 12th is our ribbon cutting. Okay. Just so you know, in the morning. And we're putting together, communications team's putting together the invite list for it. So if there's anyone that you all know that should be invited that I wouldn't know to invite, or frankly,
Or don't
you're
want
just someone you think we should invite, just run it by.
Shouldn't invite.
Got my summer brain on.
Cast a wide net.
Anyway, so just FYI, so it's a Tuesday, it's gonna be during the school day so that students can be involved.
Yep.
But
We're really excited to have
we're
this
really
project done.
excited about that. We're hoping maybe the local papers might do a story ahead of time. Maybe we'll walk them through it beforehand.
See all the new
Press
classrooms.
release, or I'll let them have a tour first.
If they're kind, we'll let them in
That'd
for a
be cool.
peek.
Photo opportunity.
And I think Chris has an update on McCall.
I do, but first I'm going to put you on the spot. Can you, what's up with the Skillings Field project, artificial turf? How's that? Do you know? I mean, is the EFPB talking about that and the funding for that and contingencies for that and so forth?
So that's a
It's a
town-managed
town
project.
project.
So we're only involved around, surprisingly, the parking.
Everything around it?
So EFPBC has discussed the parking, which has been adapted to allow for a turnaround on each end, which wasn't there, and some additional granite curbing on one side to protect from the plows destroying.
Yep.
But the field itself, I have not heard that there's any issues, and that late fall it'll be finished.
And
So
the fields out in the far fields have all been seeded.
I think that's all.
Which is high school stuff.
progress,
Yeah.
which is high school stuff.
So
right.
that's all on schedule in terms of that's
And
been
the
seeded.
irrigation systems in and
Yep.
all of that. So I think that I'm really hopeful that late fall we'll have the turf field done and ready to roll.
Great. Okay, so McCall, I just have a few quick bullet points. Later this week, in fact, I think tomorrow, where the schematic design team is having its last meeting with Flansburgh. We'll take a look at some of their interior elevations and some of the more sort of detailed drawings that they've prepared. The school committee will remember from a recent meeting, we talked about elevator, no elevator. We looked at the connector and so forth, and everybody's on board with the connector. I think we met with the building commissioner, our ADA coordinator, fire chief, everybody's on board with that. So that's really that's a creative but kind of different angle from where we were at the master plan, which really speaks to the value, and this is going to be a segue in a moment to when I talk about phase 2. But this is really the value of spending some money to do a schematic design package where you take the sort of master plan concept, work on it a little more. When you have the resources and you have the time and you bring the additional people to the table, maybe see a solution you didn't see before. So we're all very pleased at how it's going. As I said, our last meeting is tomorrow. So we should have, I'm hopeful we would have estimates on this detailed package, maybe in time for our next school committee meeting before the end of the month. I would also just remind the committee, and we began to have this conversation when we talked about our capital projects list last meeting, that this is really, McCall is one project with 2 phases. It's really not 2 projects. The more we keep thinking that and saying that, then the easier it will be for us to, I think, build that community support, particularly in terms of funding at town meeting. So I think, Judy, was there, you've shared, you or Susan, I think, have shared an email around maybe an August meeting where we will talk about kind of funding concepts for this.
With the Board of Selectmen, EFPBC,
Right.
Planning Board, and us, is that?
Capital planning, I think, is a part of
Capital
it.
planning, maybe
Town manager.
FinCom.
So we've had some preliminary conversations with management around a large fall ask to complete the construction documents for phase 1, and in addition, an appropriation to get going on schematics for phase 2. So that's sort of a concept. We'll have to talk more about how we facilitate the construction. Something that we continue to review with management and with Meg White is can we wait until, if you sort of follow this, can we wait until spring town meeting? If you can imagine a fall appropriation to complete the construction documents for phase 1. So then after fall town meeting, the architect is plowing ahead. By spring town meeting, we would have literally a biddable and buildable set of drawings. We would have a very clear picture of cost. Can we wait then until spring town meeting for an appropriation for construction? So depending upon the funding source, as some of you know, spring town meeting dollars may not be available till July 1st. I think, Judy, our calendar for next year, summer starts around June 15th or something. Is that right? Which is great, right? In terms
No
of
snow days, I'm predicting.
no snow days, but we will have a bigger summer. Means we have more time to build, which is important. So we're having some conversations now about whether, in fact, would a special town meeting be required sort of within town meeting, or maybe it's a special warrant article for which, with support from town meeting, within 5 days, those dollars are available. So that Meg White could then get a contractor immediately under a contract, because there's a lot of work that has to happen before shovels go in the ground. Contractors have to draw up the shop drawings, get all the material samples, get it sent in, architects approves everything. So you don't just sort of hire them and they go out with shovels. So that's something we're looking at. It would be aggressive, but we think doable, and we're actually going to talk about that at our schematic meeting tomorrow. So good progress there.
Good progress.
Anyone have any questions? We can move on. Okay. So we're up to our action items. And the first one, Judy, is the Spanish exchange trip.
So this trip is a trip that is taken every year. And you might remember in the fall, we welcomed some students from Spain. And then in February, I think, our students go to Spain. They tour the country and do a typical international trip experience, and then they go and have a homestay. And so one of the questions that was asked at the last meeting was, there's only an agenda here for the first week, what happens after
Right.
that? And I just confirmed with the department director that they do in fact have a homestay with other students, and that if you're not comfortable approving this now, we can have the teacher come and speak to you about that. But it's been a long-standing trip and pretty routine. And I still remember the fond farewell. For some reason, I was at the high school, not last year, but maybe the year before, when the Spanish students were leaving on their last day. And there were a lot of broken hearts for the Spanish kids and our
Tearful
kids.
party.
A lot of tears and sad goodbyes, but then they would see each other again in February. And so that's always a fun experience.
Can I ask you a related question?
Sure.
What advice would you give to a student who wants to be on an athletic team but also wants to participate in these kinds of activities? And are students not permitted to try out for teams if they're committing to doing this activity? And are there any other related activities like plays or things like that that students should know before they sign up for this or before they sign up for the sports?
So, all good questions. So I have spoken with Mark about this issue. And I think missing 2 or 3 weeks of a season could have an impact on the rest of the team, which is why it's really difficult for some team sports to not kind of lay down the law around, the season is so short, if you're going to miss 3 weeks, you can't take a slot if it's a competitive team that belongs to someone else, or you'll miss so many practices that it puts the other kids at risk because you won't know the plays, or somebody could get hurt. And so I don't think it's an all or nothing. So there are some individual sports that you could still, if you worked hard at it, say track, where or swimming, or maybe gymnastics, or some, depending on when the trip was, where you could miss a chunk of the season and still be successful. But others, where you really rely on everybody being there every day, I think it's more difficult, and so I don't think it's a hard and fast. So what I would say which is what I've said to my own children, if you make a commitment to a team, we're not going to go away on the vacation and miss 3 games. That being said, I would prefer that if it's a longer season, that they not schedule games during the vacation if we can help it. But sometimes there's such a short window, say April vacation, that you barely have time to get any games in. You have to play some games during the break. So I don't think there's an easy answer to this, but I would say for some sports it's very difficult for someone to miss 3 weeks.
Sure.
And even though it's a legitimate trip, but I would say for the most part, going away during family vacations during the February, April, or winter break in December, that we should try to accommodate families to travel during those times and not penalize kids on teams if possible. So, but if it's a play and you have a major part, you can't really disappear for 3
Sure.
weeks. That's depending on what it is. So sometimes you have to make choices.
Why are we saying 3 weeks?
The trip is 3 weeks.
The trip is 3
Trip.
weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't it? It's a 1 week
Yeah,
travel
it's-
and then 2 week
yeah.
homestay.
So I think it's a
Is it?
good.
Almost
8th
3
to the
weeks.
26th.
All right,
Yeah.
okay.
I think it's a good conversation around people making choices, I guess, is what I'm saying. And for this one, it's so obviously, it's 3 weeks, but for kids who want to go visit colleges over February vacation.
Every year this comes up, Cindy.
Yeah,
I mean,
well, that's
what I thought of
This is
when you
part
were
of the
saying
reason why I'm
this.
asking the question now, is so that
Yeah.
when we go back in the fall and kids start signing up for sports, we can just sort of be clear with both coaches and parents and students about these are the rules that we have about how we make these decisions.
Right. I can tell you that I'm just graduated my last child from high school, and my kids played sports every season, and I've never gone away during a vacation for more than a day or two because they always had commitments. And I've always said to them, and that's why we didn't do, all-star team in the summer, because if you're on the all-star baseball team, you can't miss. It's an everyday thing. And so I've just said, look, don't even go there because we have this planned and you can't let your team down. So I'm one where sometimes you have to make a commitment to a team, and it's a play or an activity. The robotics kids are,
Yeah.
They're
you
at
know,
the
in a
University of
convention.
Oklahoma right now.
And so those
Actually
kids
waiting for the
made a-
update before
made a
this
big
meeting
commitment.
comes to a close.
So, do you know anyone who's there?
I do,
Yes?
yeah. They're doing well.
they're doing well?
They'd won everything as of yesterday morning, but
Wow.
still 2 days ahead, 2
Wow.
days to go.
Okay. Anyway, thank you.
So anyway,
Yeah, no,
not
that's
any,
good to-
it's not- I
But
don't
that-
mean to give a vague answer, but I think it's really
Yep.
situational.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I just want to, you concerned that the parents don't get the message, or that the students don't get the message?
You say that again, Chris?
I was questioning whether she was concerned about parents not getting the message or
Oh.
students not getting. I believe the student athlete gets told from the very beginning, here's the schedule, this is the schedule, there's no
Yeah.
other schedule. Do you
Yeah.
understand the schedule? Do you want to sign and join the team?
Yeah.
The parents are the ones that seem to have the questions for us or each other about whether or not that's fair.
Right, because while the coach is having that conversation with the parents in the common, the parents are at the office buying 4 or 5 round-trip tickets to some wonderful place for vacation. They don't actually communicate.
just
Well, I mean, I
curious, was
think
it-
there
we
are
just
issues,
don't-
but-
You don't communicate
Yeah.
it from the, does the AD talk to every single parent? Probably not. They probably have once a year
Yeah.
auditorium, you know?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And this is the kind of thing that you would not do until your senior year because you were in sports or something, and then, or you would not do, this is kind of a one-time opportunity. in a
Well,
way,
it's
So
also
good to-
about
it's
making
good to understand,
choices. If
yes.
you're doing athletics, then you have to do college visits during the summer.
Right.
You may say, oh, well, I really want to do them when the students are there. Well, that's great, but you're doing sports, so you have to do them during the summer.
There's
It's
a little
just-
window between winter and spring sports.
It's just
And that's life.
clarity.
It's a
is-
Tuesday.
Clarity about expectations, right?
It's a Tuesday afternoon.
All right, so are we, and I do note that the principal has approved this and has, looked it over.
The only
So-
question I had just was about eligibility. I think typically these are Spanish 3 and 4 students who do this, but it doesn't say that. It doesn't say it's limited to certain Spanish students, so is it fair? Very specific number, approximately 34.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to make a motion to approve the Spanish exchange trip for Winchester High School Spanish students, planned for February 8th through 26th, 2018, provided all paperwork is in order. The superintendent has authority to cancel the trip in case of adverse world circumstances. Since there's no exclusion here for other students, that's the way I would make the motion.
So you're making a motion to add 4 Spanish students.
The words for Spanish.
Under action recommended, it doesn't even say it's for Spanish students, to be really literal about it, so I'm just saying, yes, it's for Spanish students.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you think Latin students should get to go, you should amend my motion.
Well, there may be students who are fluent in Spanish but choose to take French because they're already fluent in Spanish, but they see this as an opportunity to expand their
So this-
passions around Spanish.
So this gets back to
That
my,
was Chris's question.
that was my question, because I think this trip is typically for the upper-level Spanish students. It's just not explicitly stated.
yep.
But I believe that's what this is for.
I think because it's a Spanish exchange, the kids are
fair.
expected
Yeah.
to host and then be fluent in Spanish. Yeah. So.
Second?
All those in favor?
Anybody want a chaperone?
Yes.
Not for that
Spoke
long.
Spanish.
Not for that one.
Hockey season.
I'm sure you had some
Choices.
choice words about hockey players making hard choices. Okay. Let's see, what page is the next?
So then we're on to capital
32.
32. Okay.
and this single sheet that came out. Right?
So this is where John Denizio used to work his magic, and then he would average all of your choices and then give you a number,
I did that.
which I'm not an average, I'm more of a look at all the data and then draw some conclusions gal, but since you've already tabulated and this is really, thank you, Chris.
I actually did 2 runs, because doing the average, we have a tie, so I also ran the median,
Okay.
and we still have a tie. So let me share with you all, this is what the averages, look like, and I'm going to read them literally what they are, just so you can understand there's some gap between these. We don't have any like razor margins, okay?
Okay.
So running down the left, McCall, Phase 1 construction comes in at a 1. Central office carriage house schematic comes in at a 5. Ambrose hot water heater 2.6. Lincoln playfield drainage 5.6. Parkhurst schematic design is a 5, so that's a tie for 4th and 5th place with carriage house. I should have said that a moment ago. Then McCall classroom additions, phase 1 and 2, that comes in at 3.4. Carriage house renovation construction documents is a 7. Central office is a 6.4. And then putting those in order, The first project under the average rule is McCall Phase 1 construction is in first place. Ambrose hot water heater comes in second. McCall classroom additions, actual sort of construction, comes in number 3. And then we have a tie for 4th and 5th between the Carriage House schematic and Parkhurst schematic. The Lincoln Playfield drainage comes in at number 6. Parkhurst accessibility at number 7, and Carriage House comes in at number 8. Separately, if I ran the medians, which I won't give you all the detail, but if you want to come over elsewhere on the page, I'll tell you the order when we take the median. Number 1 is McCall Phase 1 construction. Number 2 is the classroom addition Phase 1, Phase 2 at McCall. Number 3 is the hot water at Ambrose. Number 4 is the Lincoln Playfield drainage. Number 5 is the Carriage House schematic, and it is tied with Parkhurst schematic at number 5, which is why doing it a different way didn't break that tie, although other things shifted. Parkhurst accessibility is 6, Carriage House renovation is 7, and there is no, I didn't carry an 8 because I gave you 2 5s. But anyway, you get, I mean, the distribution changes a little bit in the middle, like 2 and 3 trade places. And so before we sort of get into it, I just had to ask our esteemed chair. So under, Susan, under your ranking, it appears that you ranked the actual construction of McCall Phase 1 and Phase 2 last. Am I reading that right? That's an 8.
I think so.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So, so whether you look at the average or the median, obviously the top priority is the schematic, is the full construction documents for Phase 1 and the schematic for Phase 2, which we just said could be a fall ask. And then what's next? You know, if it could, the hot water heater certainly is failing. Pete Lawson's made that clear, and that came up high on everyone's list. Depending upon which way you look, it's in second or third place. Then what's behind it? The McCall classroom addition, the actual construction. That would be like a spring ask. Again, where it's either second or third with a hot water heater over at Ambrose. So they're not moving around wildly on the list. Then the next piece under the average rule would just be the Carriage House schematics or the Parkhurst schematic, which is kind of interesting because I remember at our last meeting they were together and Michelle said, what if we split them? And the numbers are sort of bringing it back together. But obviously they're very different in terms of cost, right? So
Right.
that's worth recognizing. So it gives you a sense of how they kind of filter out.
So we have a little bit of a sense of urgency for this because Chris and I are going to actually present this. I'm hoping Chris will take the lead tomorrow night to the capital planning group. And I need to submit something to them in advance tomorrow. And so typically, again, this is something that John Denizio would handle. So I defer to the committee on how you would like me to submit this and in what order.
Chris, how much funding do you think is going to be available?
For what?
These capital projects?
So for some of these, like the Parkhurst piece, so remember we have a couple of different sources of funding, right? If
Yeah.
I'm going to go to the bottom of the list, but it's still important stuff. On the accessibility piece, so that's the elevator, it's the stairs, the vertical piece we didn't touch before. That's actually a full set of construction documents for $35,000. That follows a schematic package for elevators and stairs, which falls, it's more towards the middle on this list. What is that, the 1 to 5th item down, I think, Parkhurst schematic design. Both of those projects, Cindy, are eligible for funding under our ADA transition money. That's $125,000 a year. So I'm ready to have that conversation with Meg White. I mean, we've talked about that. In fact, these items even exist on our ADA transition plan. So they're sort of showing up in 2 spots. So I think that's a really viable source of funding. In terms of, if I go back to the top of the list, so construction documents and schematic design for Phase 1. There are dollars, that number, that 195, very much falls. Maybe it's actually in here. Let me ask you, if you look at your, right, so if you look at your packet, if you don't mind looking at the packet, look at the backup, the year-over-year backup here, FY19 through FY23.
Yep.
Just look at some of these numbers, like on page 2, Lynch carpet 100, design specs for windows 150, Morocco window replacement 200. So these are all projects of a certain scale, if you will, that capital planning is sort of used to looking at. And so I would say, Cindy, that 195,
Yep.
in terms of the size of that number, absolutely something that capital would consider, like from the Building Stabilization Fund, just like we do other projects. What's maybe a little, so that's one source of funding. But the reality is, this is a project that leads to something much bigger, right? So for instance, the phase 1 construction, we've said the construction cost is around $1 million. That's just construction cost, not project cost. It would be a stretch to fund the construction from the Building Stabilization Fund. That's where the conversation in August comes so key with the town manager. But he has some ideas about sources of funding, particularly around phase 1. Outside of the Building Stabilization Fund.
So besides the accessibility, the disability ADA
Yeah.
fund, how much money is available through the Building Stabilization Fund?
We're going to find out tomorrow night because David Carlson, and I should just put in this plug because he's put in many years on
Yeah,
behalf of the town.
already,
David
yes.
Carlson was a longtime finance committee member and he served on Capital. And one of his jobs was to sort of create that information for us. And David has stepped down not only from Capital but from the finance committee. So my understanding is Roger Michelson is going to step up to take that on, and we just did not have, we would have had that 2 weeks ago, Cindy. We just literally don't have it, so I don't even want to take a
So you
stab
don't
at
even
it.
have a sense?
But I think it'll be at the table tomorrow night.
Okay, that'd be interesting to hear
Yeah.
when you find out, just because, Chris Linsky said this before, like, let's not argue over dollars we're never going to have anyway.
Yeah.
But
Just for the purposes of clarity, the cost to build phase 1 is, McCall, is around 1.2, and then the cost to build phase 2, the 6.8 is both phases.
It's both phases.
For the additional 6 classrooms, right? For phase 2.
I'm sorry, say that?
How many additional classrooms in phase 2?
That's for both phase 1 and phase 2. So it's the
No, but how
3
many
we get in phase
classrooms?
1, and then we have sort of 6 classrooms worth of space in phase 2. But if you remember on that top floor, we're not sure whether we call that a classroom yet or not. And again, that's the concept. Once you get into schematic design, one option may be to say, why are we talking about putting classrooms behind the library? What if we just move some of that library program back there?
Yeah.
And then as you walk into the library, there's a lot of space on the right. What if we made those the classrooms? And the library can still be that sort of special destination. But these are not master planning sort of discussions. It's
Right.
really schematic.
It also is expansion of the cafeteria, which is too small for the population.
Yep.
Which is a big piece of it.
Yep.
So I need some guidance so are we comfortable with the numbers that Chris has given in terms of order?
Well, I just gave what the math says, but I would just point out to the committee, the strong number 1 is at the top of the list. That came in everybody's top. And then when we look at, so what's set, as Judy said, we have to come up with an order. Second and third, depending upon how you run the numbers, Ambrose has a failing hot water heater. It does need to be replaced. And I would think that Pete would like to have that kind of action taken in the fall, not in the spring. And there's sort of a sense of urgency. And if we all had a failing hot water heater in our basement, we'd feel the same way. I would propose that the Ambrose hot water heater should be number 2. It's certainly it's a number we can reckon with at the capital table, no doubt. And then we look at, then the next one behind it is the McCall construction classroom additions, phase 1, phase 2. Even though you'll remember from our last meeting, and this is sort of unusual, we would do it this way, but we were actually breaking out projects for a fall versus spring ask. So this wouldn't change in that respect. So fall, 1 we would say is fall, number 2 we would say is fall, 3 we're saying is spring. And then, you come to 4 and we sort of have a tie here. We've got the carriage house schematic work and we've got the Parkhurst schematic design. If you wanted to ask my opinion, I was sort of swayed by the point Judy made at the last meeting, which is you can have people in here putting in an elevator without disturbing anything that's going on with central office, and you would get a lot of value out of spending the dollars on the accessibility piece at Parkhurst because A, it just costs less money to do it because it's smaller scope than Carriage House. B, if you fund it and you get it done, you now have the full use of the building, either for a town or to rent it. So sort of more bang for the buck, one might argue. And only because they're tied, I would say I would be swayed to say number 4 would be the Parkhurst schematic design package. And again, that's a very sort of attainable number, $15,000. To put it in perspective, we're spending 50 at McCall. So it's really just a schematic engineering package for an elevator and the stairs. And then following behind that, again, with each method we looked at, would be the carriage house schematic package. That's a bigger number at $100,000.
Well, and Lincoln's falling in there.
Lincoln would follow. Lincoln would follow. I mean, if we take the median, it's even higher, but that's just goofy the way the numbers played out. I mean, you're right. Lincoln falls in, and it's really not even close with number 7. It's almost separated by a full value. So yeah, then it would be Lincoln, followed by the carriage house renovate. Did I say
Yep.
that right?
Yep.
Nope.
And no
Park-
Park-
nope. Things in the right way. There should be some pretty good commonality about what's at the top of our lists as well as what's at the very bottom. Things get a little mushed up in the middle, but we're not too far off. Doesn't mean the carriage house is not important, but you can't actually build the carriage house till you do the design work anyway. And so the carriage house schematic comes in at number 5. So anyway, the way this list would read, just to summarize, would be McCall schematic design, phase 1 construction docks and schematics, that's number 1, that's a fall ask. Number 2 is Ambrose hot water heater, fall ask. Number 3 is the phase 1, phase 2 construction appropriation, that's a spring ask. Number 4 is the Parkhurst schematic design. I would suggest that should be a fall ask just because we can get it going and it's a pretty small amount of money,
Yep.
$15,000. Followed by the carriage house schematic at 100. That feels more like a spring ask, and just to be clear, it's ultimately the capital planning committee's recommendation to the town manager what we bring forward. I'd have a hard time believing capital would want to push the carriage house hard for the fall.
Yep.
So that would likely be a spring ask. And then you've got the Lincoln piece. I don't even know where that should be in terms of timing, but it would be number 6.
Okay.
Number 7 is the full design package for the elevator at Parkhurst and the stairs, number 7. That should not be fall because we're saying schematics in the fall. So that, to me, says that's spring. And then our last one is the carriage house. That obviously would have to be spring, and given how many other things are on this list, it's probably not going to happen in the spring.
Maybe
But
next one.
that's how the list seems to shape up. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Do you need a motion? Do you want to make a motion?
So I move that the school committee, what's the word I'm
Vote
looking?
to approve the priority list?
Yeah, the school committee
priorities.
approve the priorities for FY19, as just noted by me, with fall and spring thoughts on appropriation, and to forward that to the capital planning committee for their meeting tomorrow.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks for your work on that, Chris.
Now you know why I was using my calculator while you were talking about strategic visioning, but I was paying complete attention.
I didn't notice.
All right, so we have a gift to
So,
give them, we accept them. Begins with an A, accept.
accept, vote to accept with gratitude. This is a gift from Inca Society to the elementary school's kinesthetic learning program for furniture, and it fits into with our district goal of meeting diverse student needs. And we are grateful to Inca for this gift, and it is an amount of $5,000.
Can I ask if this is for for Lincoln?
No, it's for all of the elementary schools. Right, Jen?
Lincoln started this,
Yes.
piloted it, and then
Yeah.
Yep.
Even though the letter is to Kelly,
That's-
it's for all of the
Kelly
schools.
applied worked with all the elementary principals, but she put in the application.
Okay, great.
Got it.
I'm gonna make a motion.
Okay, yeah.
I move that we vote to accept with gratitude $5,000 from the Anchor Society for the elementary school's kinesthetic learning program.
I second.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
And then we have some minutes. The first one listed is February 1st. Those are revised to comply with the open meeting law letter determination that we received. That's at your place at the table is a slightly marked up one, which should be final. This is to go into a little more detail.
Just to be clear, that was the second meeting with the consultant, right? Okay.
Yeah,
So long as everybody's on board with that, I'm on board with
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And again, we were told that our meetings didn't have enough detail for someone who had not been in the room to know what was discussed, and so I went back to my notes and tried to reconstruct what we talked about. It was a workshop meeting with a consultant. There were no votes, there was no real decision-making. It was kind of an open-ended conversation, which I thought was really valuable to do. But again, we were told that if you just sort of summarize the topics that you touched on, that's really not enough detail. So that's what I tried to do there. The second one is also from a workshop meeting with Andrew Bundy, and that's also revised to have more detail. And then the third one is from March 30th, also revised. That was the discussion about, refresh my memory, that was the discussion about
The
elementary
versus
schools
SLI.
and how, when we decided, when we needed to approve statement of interest forms to the MSBA for both Lynch and Morocco, and we had a discussion about which one MSBA requires us to designate one of those as our top priority to go first, and we talked about, the pros and cons of both, and decided to go with Lynch, and that's, I put in a little more detail about what points different people raised, and then to comply, again, to comply with the open meeting law letter determination. And then the last set of minutes is for our last meeting.
My only comment, Susan, was
Yep.
on the March 23rd meeting. I arrived about 40 minutes late, and all the bagels and muffins were gone, but I remember it, because I
Okay.
felt bad I was showing up late. If we could just note that.
Thank you, yeah, I can put that in. You were about
Now
40
you're
minutes
thinking, oh
late.
yeah, so I remember he did show up late. That was all.
I also have the images of the worksheets that we crafted at the March 23rd meeting. I'm happy to submit those
Okay.
as backup.
Yeah,
if
sure.
That would be helpful.
It's a good idea.
All right, so let me just write this down.
So are you happy to take a motion for all four?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just writing.
I'm sorry, Chris, on February 1st, were you absent or did you just show up late?
That was the second meeting.
It was the second
I
meeting?
was absent.
You were absent?
I was
Okay.
absent. I was there for the first meeting, not the second.
Okay, we'll take you off.
Yeah, that's what's in here.
Yeah.
It shows the danger of following a template and then using your notes, and, oh, somebody talked about master plan, so.
And I hadn't planned to be, but I think that Susan was reminding me today, I think there was a reschedule there or something.
Yeah.
Of that meeting, and I could not make that reschedule. Yeah.
Okay.
Otherwise I'd have been there.
So any changes to the June 20th minutes, which do go into considerable detail?
They're only 9 pages long.
Well, you gotta do what you gotta do, and I, people do read these minutes and try to figure out what's going on, so
Yeah.
that's important.
All right, they were good to me.
You can amend them afterwards if need be. So I would be happy to have a motion.
So, since I was absent for one of these, let me,
All right.
maybe, I mean, I can make a motion on 3 of them.
I can make a motion.
Yeah, you can technically make a motion even if you want.
I'll make the motion. I'll move we approve the minutes as amended, this presented and subsequently amended this evening at the table for February 1st, March 23rd, March 30th, and June 20th.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. Yeah, that was a lot to read. Thank you.
Are you abstaining?
I didn't vote, I'm abstaining.
Oh, I didn't hear you. So, sorry. So it was 4 in favor and Mr. Nixon abstained.
Yeah.
Okay. So the chair's report is really quick. If you, it's the single sheet that says WFEE logo. Winchester Foundation for Educational Excellence would like to finalize the format of the plaque that it would like to have in the high school lobby to recognize the donors through the Powered Up campaign, the major donors, and that we did have some really major donors, really major support from our community for technology. We approved the concept of this plaque a while back when Powered Up was just getting started, and they want to have it made and have it up in the lobby when for the ribbon cutting and for the opening of school. So they just wanted to run this by us one last time with the final language and also with the final quote. I think if memory serves, when we discussed this the first time, they were kicking around several quotes, and we weren't really happy with all of that. It was hard for all of us to be happy with one, and it's a hard thing to do, to find something that is from someone and is relatively timeless and enduring, but yet speaks to technology, which changes so quickly and is so recent. So I think John Dewey saying, if we teach today as we taught yesterday, we rob our students of tomorrow, is pretty good. So I don't know.
It's ironic to take someone who's associated with the Dewey Decimal System as our spokesperson of wisdom.
Except that it was a relative. It's Melville Dewey who came up with the Dewey Decimal System. Just because I spent a lot of time in libraries. I will that little tidbit.
Yeah, what does that plaque say up there?
I will also say I've not done any historical search to make sure that John Dewey was an upstanding member of society, but
We'll trust Susan on that one.
we'll trust you.
I know Karen overthought this, so it was good.
Melvin, too?
Is this a,
Melville.
Melville, named after,
Maybe he was related to Herman Melville. I don't know.
oh, we'll have to ferret this out.
I'm looking it up now.
is the
You gotta
format
Google
of this
that. I
one
gotta
where
find
it's
that.
somewhat interchangeable too? I mean, it's not like bricks glued onto the wall,
It's
right?
gonna follow the format of the plaque that goes up for the building itself, designed by and approved by, and I think it's gonna be either stainless steel or etched glass.
So it's pretty permanent.
It is pretty permanent.
Okay.
And where is it going to be located?
In the lobby of the high school. Powered Up did provide funding to bring technology to all of the schools.
Right.
But we kind of batted this back and forth and thought that putting something in the high school would be, eventually everybody makes it to the high school, and it's a community gathering place. The auditorium is where we have town meetings, so it just made sense to have this plaque in the lobby.
It's in the lobby, meaning in the entryway as you're coming in, or in the lobby of
in
the
the
office?
Common.
It's in the dining commons.
I'm sorry, yeah, in the
Where
commons.
is
So
there
sort
a
of a-
wall in the
In the
common?
commons.
By the
All along the left?
on the
Yeah,
left,
on the
by
left.
the auditorium.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so
in the
right
commons.
outside the
To the
auditorium.
left,
Okay,
up
that
above
makes
where the
sense.
plaque is.
On the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably around
Yeah.
there, yeah.
In that area.
Somewhere very visible where people coming in for games or events in the auditorium could see it and appreciate it.
So I just, wanted you guys to see it.
Okay. Very quickly, superintendent's report. It is summer. And you would think that Jennifer Ellen Emma would not have to come on a Friday night to catch up on all the work
Or
that she
find a
has to do.
woodchuck.
Or find a woodchuck.
Would have missed the woodchuck. right.
However, this is a happening place. I can barely get a parking space every day because there's so much going on. And so there's lots of summer PD. In fact, starting, I think, this week, next week, almost every day there's something, and often multiple somethings. not just here, but in other schools. We also have summer enrichment going on all over, and special education extended year program going well. And so we have students in all of our schools except the high school, which is closed for the summer. The McCall Middle School gym project has started,
It has, it's going well.
which is great.
And the Morocco fire alarm is actually ahead of schedule.
And we are doing our final hiring for any positions that had late turnover for people moving, or some teaching assistants, ISS, those sorts of things. So we are busy, and people wonder what you do in the summer and think we have it off, but alas, no, this is our busiest time, and we love it.
Is
And
EYP at Lincoln?
EYP is at Lynch.
Yes, I remember somebody saying it's sort of like those stories about the fishermen during the winter, you know, they mend their nets. I think it's the opposite for educators in the summer is when they do all their sort of recharging and PD and planning for the next year. So it's great to see you guys doing that kind of work. It's so invaluable.
Yeah, we're really stoked for it. I think Jen has done an incredible job with a wide variety of PD that's very differentiated.
Very
And I
cool.
think that she always asks teachers after every PD session, how did it go? What would you do differently? And she really reads it and takes it to heart and uses it to plan.
They have really good ideas, so that's why. Thank
Smart.
you.
Smart.
That's smart. So future agenda items, we're going to take up the master plan, and it's shaping up. Flansburgh is still working on the document, probably.
The EFPBC's anxious to see a draft at some point, too.
I'm aware of that.
Again, look at the draft goals. Again, take up the strategic visioning if need be during the summer or right in the fall. And I think we also should be aware that the Swim Winchester is going to come back and talk to us again, probably at the next meeting. Is there anything else that I should be adding to our list to start talking about?
You can take strategic visioning off there, right?
All right.
Okay, for now.
Yeah, that's fine.
We moved it up.
We did move it up. You can let me know.
When will we see Ellen?
Yeah.
Ellen's starting Monday. So you'll see her at the meeting on the 25th.
Okay. So the only thing I'm thinking of is Mark Aria doesn't typically come 3 times a year to give his sports report, but he always comes at least once and sometimes twice. I think he gave did he give us a report? I'm just looking at Cindy for like some random reason. Did he give us did he even give us a fall report for this school year? I don't know that he did, but I don't think we got one for winter and spring. Did we?
I believe we got a visit in the fall,
Fall. Okay.
but I don't know that I actually ever got that document. I know what you're talking about. I don't think I got any of
So
those
you're looking
docs.
for the,
It's a summative, like
Yeah,
3-pager.
a couple of times he has, so, he produces these reports by season that we
Yep.
often get as part of the deliberative budget process, which is great. But he has separately in the past come sort of at the wrap-up at the end of the year to kind of give the big picture,
sure,
which is participation and costs and so forth. It's just nice to see it,
we can bring him in the fall. Does that sound good?
or some.
It's usually a season
You
behind.
want to see, I don't know
Well,
if
he
he's
doesn't
around.
work in the summer, does he?
Right.
He's
Well, by the 25th, I think he'll be getting ready for the start of football.
Right.
And then all of the, yeah, I'm sure,
Okay.
So-
he does work, he doesn't get paid, but he does work in the summer.
Well, I'm not saying add to his burden in August. Maybe it's an early fall thing, but it seems like we haven't had that kind of summative athletics update
For
from
the
them
2016-17.
school year. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll ask him for
It
it.
is a nice continuation because you see how the programs are expanding and how many kids
Absolutely.
are trying out.
I mean, if he's around on the 25th, we can ask him.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, sounds good. So we do have need of an executive session. I guess we could do one motion.
So we need a motion with A, B,
Aye.
and C.
Mhm.
Would you like me to move that we go into executive session to consider the purchase, exchange, taking, lease, or value of real property at the Mystic School, review minutes, since such discussion may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the governmental body, as well as for the purposes of discussion of strategy related to individual employment contracts for administrative staff members, since discussion in open session may be detrimental to bargaining, and for purposes of discussion of strategy related to the superintendent's individual employment contract, since discussion in open session may be detrimental to bargaining.
And then we need a roll call vote. Right?
Aye.
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 Okay, sorry.
Time is it? 9:10.
And we will reconvene in public session only for the purposes of adjournment.
Correct.
Correct.
That is correct.
I said that before everybody voted.
Yeah, we voted on that.
right.
Okay.
Good night, Winchester.
Thanks, Tyler.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, WinCan.
You guys all.